Hello, you, according to the Facebook statistics, 19% ladies and 80% gentlemen. I am Thomas, or Witchfinder, from Helvetets Port, and I will be the sole chairman of this expose. And for those of you who don't know us, we're a Swedish heavy metal band that started in the early 2000s. And back then I didn't think there was any real heavy metal around, and I couldn't understand why no one would want to play the best music on earth. Well, I sure did, so I got this venture going, and now we've grown into a 5-piece band. Well, it's been 10 years since our last album, but now we're finally back with a new one. And this is called From Life to Death. This one came out in August. It's both an LP and a mini LP, containing a total of 14 songs. And this is a bit more epic than previous material. It deals with ancient times, forgotten times, medieval times, and events that cannot even be placed in time. And as you can see, this one has got an Egyptian theme visually, and this is also represented in a couple of songs. And one of them is ruled with an iron hand that we recorded a music video for that also came out in August. This is released on High Roller Records, like our previous one. And High Roller is the label for classic heavy metal. They understand this kind of thing perfectly. And the cover art for this album was made by a friend called Anders Muammar. This is for the mini LP. And he's also the guy who helped us with our last album, cover art. And one of his wishes back then was that we made a song about Ator from those 80s Conan type movies. And so finally 10 years later we were able to fulfill his wishes with the song The Invincible from our latest album. Invincible, throw away those shades of fire. The invincible, shades of gold. The spider weaves. We're also looking to expand our stage show, and we've got some pretty epic stuff planned if the circumstances are right. And one time where it could have been epic but fell kind of flat was at the very first Muskelrock in 2009, where we had our first headliner spot and had a stage show with pyrotechnics and all. And then the day before I had shouted so much at the Axe Witch concert and also fallen asleep in a puddle of water in my tent. So when I woke up the next day, I had gotten sick and completely lost my voice, and I could barely whisper. So that concert was pretty much an instrumental one. Well, lesson learned, and now I don't indulge in any decadence before a show, that is. Now, what would a Helvetets Port interview be without discussing heavy metal itself? What's the state of the genre going into the 2020s, and what's our philosophy when it comes to heavy metal? Well, most people agree that the golden age for classic heavy metal was the 80s, and that might not be possible to recreate. So what is the best course of action for heavy metal? Some people believe that you have to let go of the past in order to make heavy metal truly viable again. But I say, what's the alternative? When you start a new band, you have to make some kind of decision on how you want to sound. And I believe that the basis, the template that the 80s has given us is just too damn good not to take advantage of. What's the alternative besides inventing a completely new music genre, sounding like modern bands? It's a pretty easy decision if you ask me. When you think of it, intelligent people almost always have warmer things to say about old culture than about new culture, no matter what it is. And I believe that speaks for something, that the world is constantly moving in a more shallow direction. And I'm not saying to be a carbon copy of the 80s bands, at least not of one single band. 80s metal is a cornucopia, a gift that keeps on giving. It's perfectly enough to never bore you and to inspire you to take unique approaches. And if you really want to be a classic heavy metal band, I don't think you should play overly heavy, overly aggressive, overly fast. I believe that heaviness in metal is conjured through contrasts. If you're too single-minded about living up to the moniker of heavy, you won't come across as classic heavy metal. Now, those bands in the past, they didn't know about death or black metal. They didn't know you could go that far. And I believe that you should cleanse your mind of any such sentiments. When you're listening to music, you can be in awe of it, but that shouldn't be the case when you're making it. If you know your genre well enough, you don't have to walk on eggshells around it. Just grab heavy metal by the throat and make it scream your name.